A third court storming inside Pinnacle Bank Arena, but this time it's the Husker women pulling off the upset as they take down number 2 Iowa 82-79. Welcome in to She Scores, a women in sports focused podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pearson. Welcome in to another episode of She Scores. I'm your host, Sarah Pearson. No guest for this week's episode. I apologize, but I just did not have time to sit down and record with someone, hence why I'm doing this morning, hours before it's due. But, I feel like that's college life for you. Sometimes you do things last minute and you get it turned in right when you need to. But without further ado, let's just dive into this episode a little bit. So last week, I kind of shared a little bit about my story, my journey, how I kind of got to where I'm at. And this week, I'm gonna dive into the list of questions that I asked on my first 2 episodes with my guests. And so I thought I would answer some of these questions a little bit. So get to know me a little bit more here this week. What made you decide you wanted to work in sports? I think what really made me decide I wanted to work in sports, just my lifelong passion for that. Sports have been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I started playing when I was 5 years old, and I think I really knew from early on that I always wanted sports to be a part of my life. And for the longest time, from when I was really little up until I got into high school, I thought I was going to be the star athlete. I'm like, I'm going to be a Nebraska volleyball player, going to be the next Jordan Larson. I'm going to, win a national championship, go to the Olympics. I had really big goals, but I realized when I got into high school, you're 5 feet tall, you never played club, you're not athletic, you sit the bench on JV, you're not going to make it at the collegiate level. So get that out of your head and figure something else out. So when I got to high school, then I started doing all the different realms of sports media, broadcasting, anchoring, reporting, all those different things. And I think that's when I really realized, okay, I can make a career out of this. So then I came into college and I've just been doing more and more and more. So that's kind of what made me realize I wanted to work in sports, kind of in the short realm. I know I dove a lot deeper into it last week, but that's just kind of how I got into it. Now, the whole point of this podcast is about women specifically working in sports and kind of the challenges they've faced. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that I've faced is constantly trying to prove yourself. I always feel the need that whenever I go on air or get an assignment, I always have to be perfect. I can't mess up. Everything just has to go perfectly well. And if it doesn't, I'm always I'm waiting for that message from like, okay, you messed up, you did something wrong, like, you're not cut out for this. Or it's because, you're not prepared, you didn't your homework, you don't know this or that. And I think, honestly, I've really learned over the past few years that it's okay to mess up. Like, nobody's perfect. You're going to make mistakes. It happens. But learning from those mistakes and just honestly getting better each time you go on. Like, every rep you get, make it a opportunity to get better at something. And I've also learned that not everybody is going to like what you do. Not everybody is going to accept it, who you are and how you do it. But, learning to be okay with that and knowing that you do not need to please everybody. But just as long as you work hard, things are going to turn out the way you want them to. I've always been that person who wants to please everybody and make everyone happy and have everything go that way, but really, the only person that you need to please and make happy is yourself. There's my little Motivation Monday. Hey, it's Monday when I'm recording this, so there you go. But, I've worked really hard these past 4 years. I've done a lot of things, and I'm hoping that, I may not be 100% perfect at the things I do, but I try really hard, I have fun with it, and I'm hoping that hard work and passion can hopefully land me a job after graduation. I graduate in May. If any sports media companies are listening to this and want to hire me, hit me up, find me on all my socials, the LinkedIn, all that. I'm ready to talk. So now that I've kind of talked about the challenges I faced in the industry a little bit, I want to go into kind of something a little more fun. I want to talk about one of the favorite games I've covered. That would be the Nebraska women's basketball game against Iowa this past spring. That was just really exciting because we had never beaten Iowa before, so, a lot was on the line, and I think the biggest part of that game was, Caitlin Clark, Iowa's star player. I'm sure everybody listening to this knows who she is. She was going for the all-time scoring record, and, ESPN was there. About, I think every media outlet in the country was there because they thought she was going to break the record, and it was really funny. So, she was going off, doing her thing. And then she went into the fourth quarter, and Nebraska shut her down. I'm not reporting on this game anymore, so I can be excited about it. Huskers shut her down. 0 points in the fourth quarter, and we knocked off number 2 Iowa. I think it was 81-79, I believe, but that was just super exciting. And, I was hosting the pregame, postgame show, so I was just standing up there because there were no seats for me. There were that many people there. And, so I was just standing there and, I was, shaking internally. It's a good thing I wasn't on air during the actual game itself, but because I actually started crying, I will admit it. It was exciting. And so, just standing up there and seeing them all storm the court. We had done that twice for the men and now once for the women. So 3 court storms at PBA last year for Husker Hoops. So overall, just really exciting. And I remember that game. I met Holly Rowe, She is one of the biggest icons for women in sports media, so I remember getting to meet her, and that was just really cool having that interaction, and just overall a really great day and something that I will never forget. Another topic that I really wanted to dive into today was, I'm sure everybody has had that moment in their career. If, any women in sports media listening to this, or maybe if you haven't, you know someone who has, or you're hoping to have that moment maybe someday soon. But I want to talk about your I made it moment. That moment where you're like, okay, this, I've made it in the industry, or this is what I want to do. Just that moment that kind of lit that spark. And for me, that moment was when this past spring, I was making my play-by-play debut on BTN Plus. I had done color before, but this was my first time getting to do play-by-play, and it was only for a couple of innings, but the moment that I really took away from this is one of Nebraska's star players, Billie Andrews. She was going for the all-time home run record at Nebraska. She needed 1 more to tie and 2 to break. And over that whole past week, I had been doing games on the radio. And, I was just waiting for that home run. I had done, I believe 4 games over 5 days or 5 over 6. I did a lot of games that week, and she hadn't broken it yet. Or if she did hit a home run, it was the ending when I was on color. So I was really hoping, I'm like, Billie, please, if you want to hit a home run, please do it during the 3rd and 4th inning so that I can have that moment. And throughout the game, I'm just like, please, please, please. And she came up to the plate, and I don't remember if it was the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th. I know I was on play-by-play for 2 or 3 of those innings. Anyway, so she came up to the plate, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, is this going to happen? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And, she hit the pitch, smacks it, and I knew as soon as that she made contact with that, I'm like, this is gone. But I had to remember, I'm like, you're on BTN Plus, settle down, keep your cool. And I feel like I did that pretty well. Here's the call. Andrews takes a 2-1, swings and blasts that deep out in the right field, and that ball is really cool moment for me, and I remember when Nebraska posted that on their social media, I thought, that's my voice behind that call on the Huskers social. So that was just really cool. And that was like kind of that moment where I thought, I've made it, like, all my hard work has paid off for this moment. So that was just really special for me. So working in sports, obviously, it's super fun. And I think one of my favorite parts about the job is honestly that itself. Like, sports are fun. Getting to say that, for a living, you get to go watch a game. I honestly can't think of any other career where you get to do something like that. But for me, I think one of my other favorite parts about the job, besides the fact that, it is fun, is honestly like the people you meet. I think whenever I go and cover all these different events, I love seeing all the different media members that I know and catching up, because some of those people I may not have seen in like a few months. And so getting to just catch up and share stories and honestly talk about the Huskers and just making those connections, because that's a huge thing in this industry. Is they always say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So every time I go to a game, I'm always, trying to introduce myself to people, so, reconnect with the people that I've already known. So yeah, just really making those connections and getting to know people. One other thing that I really wanted to talk about was the stress and the overwhelmingness of this industry, because sometimes the hours can get really long. You're working over 12 hours, maybe back-to-back days, and just the amount of things you need to do, whether it's editing a really long video, going to a game and it going, 5 extra innings and you don't get home till 2 a.m. and you're just exhausted with everything that's going on. That's something that I've really experienced, especially these last 4 days, pretty recently. I was covering the 2024 NSAA State Volleyball Tournament, and it was really fun, but honestly, really long and kind of stressful, because I was there basically from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or later, working over 12 hours for 4 days straight. And so, getting home at midnight and then turning around and being back there at 9 a.m. the following morning. But honestly, if you want to work in sports, that's something that you're going to have to deal with. And, the hours may be long, it may be stressful, but sports are fun. Like, I got to sit and watch volleyball all day, every day. And I couldn't think of, there's no other jobs out there that let you do that. And so, yeah, it may be stressful, but it is super fun. It's funny, I always ask people, how do you deal with the stress and the overwhelmingness? Because that's something I don't deal with it. It kind of just happens. They always say work-life balance, and that's something that I really do need to work on. And I feel that's kind of another problem that young women have in this industry, because we're always constantly trying to prove ourselves and, work hard and show people that we're willing to work hard. And so I think part of that comes with saying yes to everything that you can and trying to get as many reps as possible, which is something that I've really tried to do here in college. But I think really, especially this year, I've kind of tried to take a step back a little bit, try and enjoy all the other parts of college, like, attending the games as a fan. When I'm not working, I am the biggest diehard Nebraska fan. I love being in the front row at the games, in the student section, cheering my head off. And that's something that, my first 3 years, I would miss out on going to games because I got asked to work them. And me being the people pleaser, I never wanted to say no. But coming into my last year of college, I said, Sarah, it's okay to take a step back. You don't have to say yes to everything. Like, other people can help out, and you can just go to the game and enjoy them as a fan, because it's your last year to be able to do that. You have your entire life to work. So That's something I've really tried to work on this year is my work-life balance. I'm still struggle with it a little bit, but I think I've gotten a lot better as my college years have gone on. Another thing that I really wanted to dive into today was the role models in this industry, because that's another reason why I really wanted to start this podcast, was so I could connect with other women in the industry and learn kind of who inspired them, because, these people that I've been talking to, they've inspired me. And so I just wanted to share a couple of people that have really had an impact on my sports media career. Lauren Michelson, who is a sports reporter at KETV in Omaha. She's honestly really the reason why I wanted to get into sports anchoring in the first place, because my sophomore year, she worked at Channel 8, and I was interning at Channel 8, and I got there, and just seeing her crushing it in the sports industry, like, I would see her on air every night and go to games with her, and so just honestly learning from her, it inspired me to want to try anchoring. Like, I had never really thought about being a sports anchor before, but after watching her and learning from her, it inspired me to want to try anchoring. So then that following semester, I got started with Nebraska Nightly here at the CoJMC and doing that. And it's something that I've kind of thought about doing here after I graduate. I know I've talked about wanting to go into play-by-play, but if I can't do that, honestly, sports anchoring, that would be my second choice. And Lauren is a huge, huge reason for that. Another woman that I've really looked up to in the sports media industry is Kelsey Mannix. She is a sports anchor at KMTV in Omaha, and I interviewed her for a project that I did last fall, and then I ended up meeting her in person at state volleyball, and so ever since we met in person, that connection was really there, and we've always stayed in touch. And something that both Lauren and Kelsey have helped me with is, honestly, anytime I have a question, it doesn't matter what time it is, I can reach out and they're always willing to respond, and I'll send them my reel or a project or a package I did, and they're always willing to give me feedback. So honestly, just having both of them in my life as a young woman in sports has really inspired me and also helped me in so many different ways. Seeing these two women in the industry and having them to look up to, and honestly, as someone who wants to go into what they're doing, just being able to see them and imagine myself in their shoes really just has been so amazing, and I could not be more grateful for the impact that they've both had on my life. So to kind of close out this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about a moment that I've had that kind of warmed my heart a little bit. I've usually not one to get emotional, but this was pretty cool. So this past spring, it was towards the end of baseball season, something really cool happened. So I was walking down on the field, and I had my camera with me, and I hear someone trying to get my attention, and it's this dad with his little girl, and they're kind of trying to signal me over, and the dad's like, "She's a young woman in sports too," and I'm like, so I walk over, and the dad asked, "She wants your autograph." I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to be that little girl, going down and wanting to get the players' autographs. Heck, I'll admit, that's still me to this day. I still want to get their autographs. And the dad was like, "She's a young woman in sports just like you." I'm like, oh. So I signed her glove, and we took a picture. That was just really cool. I always envisioned that happening someday, but I never imagined it would happen here in college. So that was just a really sweet moment. And Tatum, if you're listening to this, just dream big, work hard, and you can be here someday too. I think that's really, I don't know if I'm qualified to give advice because I'm still in college, but if I was qualified to give advice, that's what I would say. Just dream big, work hard, and good things will happen. So yeah, that's how I'm going to close out today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. This has been She Scores. Thank you for listening. Tune in Mondays at noon to hear from more women changing the game.